Welcome to our webinar on Zoom Basics for running online small groups. My name is Stephen Seraphin, and I'm the Associate Director for Catechesis in Catholic Schools for the Archdiocese of Newark. This past year has thrown many new challenges at us, but it has also opened up new ways in which we can connect and accompany those we minister to by developing virtual communities. This is why the Archdiocese has teamed up with Renew International to assist our parishes, schools, and other faith communities in how to foster effective small Christian communities using the Zoom platform. I would like to welcome Paul Krenzlock from Renew as we dive into the basics of how to use Zoom to enliven your small group experience.
Great, thank you so much, Stephen. And I just want to say that we're pleased and delighted to collaborate with the Archdiocese of Newark to bring you this Zoom Basics workshop. And I also want to welcome anybody who may be joining us from a broader audience, a national audience. And just to let you know that Renew really wants to help you, not only with the technology, but any of your small group needs within the parish setting. So just want to let you know that you can do this. This has been a huge learning curve for all of us, especially getting online. But it is doable, and so many people who have not had any experience are now thriving with using this technology and doing small groups online. So with no further ado, I am going to get started. So let me just advance the slide. So the first thing I want to let you know as we go through this is that there are a lot of great resources out there. And hopefully this little workshop that we're doing for you today will be of help. But I want to let you know that the Zoom website itself is excellent. So if you simply go to the website, zoom.us, you'll see some little icons in the upper right-hand corner for support. So if you click those, it gives you all kinds of tutorials that will tell you more than you would ever want to know about Zoom, but also basic things for getting started. And also I want to let you know that simply Googling YouTube and typing in how to use Zoom or any question you would have about Zoom is an excellent resource as well. So here's what Stephen and I are going to do today. We're going to just show you briefly how to sign up for an account, how to schedule a meeting, how to copy the meeting link once you've scheduled it and send it to participants. And I will do those things. Then Stephen's going to tell you more about some important Zoom controls, including how to make someone a co-host. We'll talk a little bit about breakouts and pre-assigning rooms, screen sharing, fixing your microphone or video, and the importance of the chat function. And finally, at the end, we'll talk a little bit about some best practices for running online small groups and some subscription information as well. So we're going to start out with how to sign up for a new account. So I will need to do a new screen share here. So just bear with me for a moment. All right. So Stephen, is that up? Can you see that Zoom picture?
Yep, we're good to go.
Great. So first of all, signing up is really easy. And one of the nice things about Zoom is it does provide a free option for free accounts. Now, I'll talk about this a little bit more later. There are some limitations. For free accounts, for more than 2 people, you are limited to meetings of just 40 minutes. But for something just to get a feel for and practice with, and if you're just trying to Zoom with another person, you have all the same functions with the free account as you do with the paid account. But I will give you more information about that later. But basically, you just sign up here right in the right-hand corner. It's just going to ask you a couple of questions and ask you for your email and a password. It is going to ask you for verification for your birth date. Not exactly sure why Zoom does that, but when you see that screen, don't freak out. That's just part of it. That's not shared. And so a couple of easy steps, and you can sign up and have your free Zoom account. But we're going to sign in here, and I'm going to sign into my account now, and I'm going to show you how to schedule a meeting and then disseminate that meeting. All right, so here we are. I guess this is sort of a home page for my account in some ways. And I'm going to keep it really simple. You know, there's a lot of different links on here and menus, but you only need a couple really to get used to Zoom and be proficient. So the most important thing you're going to do to schedule a meeting is go right up here to where it says schedule a meeting, click on that, and then start filling out these various fields, which I'm going to walk with you through you on these different fields. So when you're scheduling a meeting, the first thing is that you want to give your meeting a name. So let's just call it it kind of comes up here, Wednesday faith sharing. And it's up to you whether or not you want to put in a further description. Typically, I don't. I just have the topic, which gives enough information. But if you want, you can describe it further right down here. I'm going to keep things pretty simple here. There is an opportunity for templates, just meaning if you've used and set up other meetings in the past and you want to use the exact same time of the day, day of the week, you can simply use a template. So all of my different templates that I've used in the past are all set up. You can click one of those and use those settings. But so that's just to let you know it's there. But just to get going, really it's easy just to set up your meeting from scratch. So put in your topic name, and then you're going to want to find a date. So let's say that we're going to start this next Wednesday, because it's at Wednesdays. And we'll make it early morning face sharing, 8 o'clock. That's pretty early. So put in that it's AM. The faith sharing, it's for an hour. Let's make that an hour and a half. This group has a lot of faith sharing to do. And then this is important. Sometimes I forget this, but you have options for your time zone. So for me, on my screen, it always defaults to the Pacific time. So I have to go down here, and since Stephen and I are located in New Jersey, we're going to put Eastern time zone. So that's set. This, if you're running a small group, this recurring checkbox is probably something you may want to use. You can set up an individual meeting for each week if you want. So you can avoid this. But if you know that you're doing, let's say, 6 meetings all on the same day of the week and the same time, this recurring option lets you just set it up once rather than having to do it each and every week, which you could do if you wanted to. So here we are, recurring meeting, and we're going to say that this meeting takes place weekly. So once a week, it's on Wednesdays, and you can either have it end by a certain date or after a certain number of occurrences. So let's say that it's a 6-week session. And there you go, it's all set up. It's gonna send out a link for everybody that they can use for each of the 6 weeks that they're meeting. Now, registration required. Probably for small groups, that's something you will not need to do. That might be useful actually for a parish type of setting if you're inviting people to register for some kind of small group. But as you are setting this up just for you and your small group, that's something that is probably not necessary in a lot of cases. But if you do need it, please contact Stephen and I, and we can help you walk through that as well with our contact information at the end. We recommend that you use both the passcode and the waiting room. So the passcode is generated automatically. I believe you probably can put in your own, but I think that, or maybe that's for the ID, but For the passcode, it's a really good idea so that other people can't Zoom bomb you and just enter your meeting. And that has happened to a lot of people. And the waiting room option means that who's ever running the meeting, there will be a little thing on the bottom of the screen as the meeting's starting. It's saying that this person wants to be admitted. So you just admit them one at a time. If you don't want to use the waiting room option, because not using it kind of allows you then not to worry about admitting people as they're coming into the meeting, you can unclick it if you want. But you have to use at least one of these two. Could be the waiting room without the passcode, or it could be the passcode without the waiting room. But it's not a bad idea to use both. Require authentication to join. That's really not anything you'll need for the purpose of the parish. And then for host and participant, this is when people are coming on. It allows us to see people right away. So I typically put these on for both myself and the participant. The neat thing about Zoom is that it gives people an option to join a meeting either by computer or telephone. So sometimes for whatever reason, maybe people don't have an availability to their screen, and so they'll call in. So you can give people that option to either enter in using the computer or the phone. So I always click both. And then finally, it gives you some meeting options down here. So this first one, allow participants to join at any time. That means that participants could join a meeting before the person hosting it could. Typically, I don't click that. I want to be as the host, the first one on the meeting, just so I can welcome people and greet people. So I leave that unchecked typically. I do check this. I mute people upon entry. And that's nice to do because let's say when somebody enters, they have a lot of background noise going on. So you don't necessarily want to hear that right away. So this allows people to come on quietly and then they can unmute themselves. This is a feature you may want to use, and we'll talk about this more later on. But Stephen's going to talk more about breakouts, that when you're in a small group, or maybe it's a larger group, but during that larger group, you want to break people out into smaller groups, you can do that. And you can also set this up ahead of time. So let me just click on this and show you. So you can create different breakout rooms. And the way you do this is a couple of different ways. But there's a tiny little plus here by the room. And when I click that, you can start adding people room by room by putting in their email address. You can also import a whole group of names from a CSV file and just upload them as well. So this is an option for you. You know, realistically, I would say a lot of people just do the breakouts right when they get into the small group. Sometimes if you set a breakout ahead of time and some people don't show up, things like that, then you end up having to reconfigure your small groups anyway. But it's an option. You can click if you automatically want to record the meeting. I will say for face sharing, you're probably not going to want to do that out of a privacy sense. You know, that's a private, confidential thing. So typically for online face sharing, I can't see many reasons why you'd probably want to record a meeting. Now, if it's a parish meeting or something else, that could be a different story. And then I've never had reason to use this last one to approve or block entry from users for specific regions. So let me just quickly run through this again. So you'll click the schedule a meeting, put in a topic, description, very optional. You know, I typically don't use the template, so I skip right down to scheduling a date and a time, a length. Make sure you put the time zone in. If it's a recurring meeting, you can use that. oftentimes for small group sharing. In a small group, just for people I know, I don't require a registration, but that is an option. Passcode, waiting room, turn on the host and participant video, option for telephone and computer, and then these meeting options down below. The only other thing down here is you do have an opportunity to have an alternative host, and that would need to be a person who shares the same Zoom license. I'll talk about that later. So you can't make that just anybody if they don't have a Zoom account. So I'm going to save this now, and then I'm going to show you how to copy it and send it to folks. So now I've saved it. And as you can see right up here, you can go in and start your meeting then once it's saved. If you go into your account and find the meeting, and you would find this meeting right over here on the left, it would be located with other saved meetings that you have. So you start it with this button right here. But before you start it, you got to get the meeting link to people. So you simply, here's the invite link. You simply go down here, copy the invitation. So that's just a simple click. And then here it is. So here's all the information that people will receive. So I'm going to copy this. So I click that, and now it's copied to my clipboard. And then all you do simply is whoever you are emailing this information to, you will cut and paste this into an email, the group you want to send it to, and they will have this link. So it's going to look, I'm going to get out of this here in a moment. All right, cancel it. So let me go back to our PowerPoint here for a moment. So after I cut and paste that, you're going to get an invitation in the inbox that will look something like this, that I'm inviting you to a scheduled Zoom meeting. Now, this isn't the exact one that I just set up. This was an earlier one, but has the topic, the time, and the date, and then it has the link. And it also has a passcode down here. At times, in certain situations, maybe when you're calling in, you might have to use this meeting ID, but typically you'll just need a passcode. And also, you may get a long list of telephone numbers. Well, you will actually. I just didn't have room to include these when you get your invitation. And one last thing before I turn it over to Stephen here is that the beauty of Zoom is that to participate in a Zoom meeting, you don't have to have a Zoom account. Now, of course, the host does, or the facilitator, but once that facilitator sends out this link, anybody with a computer, a camcorder, or video and a microphone can participate in a Zoom meeting. All right. Is there anything you want to add to anything I said, Stephen?
No, you did a great overview. The only thing, additional thing would be with I'll get into this a little bit with the breakout rooms, but whatever email address that you assign in those pre-assigned breakout rooms, that's the email address that the participant would use. So we'll talk about that, but so that's one tough part about pre-assigning breakout rooms is that they have to use that email address. So as they try to log in with a different email address, they wouldn't be able to access the meeting, or they might not be assigned to that breakout room, but we'll show you how to set that up.
Okay, that's great. Okay, very good point. All right, Stephen, so I'm going to turn it over to you, and just let me know when you want me to advance.
Awesome, thank you. So we're going to dive into each of the Zoom icons below, some more in detail, some just we're going to do a cursory overview. But as you can see, this is what shows up on the bottom of your screen when you're on Zoom. If you don't see it, you just can scroll down or move your mouse, and it should pop up there for you. Starting from left to right, you'll have your mute button that controls all your sound. That either looks like what's on the screen, or it has a slash through it. You'll see that in a second. This is your video button. Then you have security, which controls your waiting room, allows you to add, to change around the credentials of your meeting, of who can access it, who can't. You'll have your participants, which we'll get into in a second, where you'll be able to see all your participants and change some functions of each of those participants. You have the chat, which is a very important feature, especially when hosting an online meeting, and I'll explain that towards the end. Your shared screen button, the record feature, and the breakout rooms. If you have a free account, you will not see that breakout rooms tab, because that's not available for the free function. But if you have the paid function, which we'll talk about what that costs in a little bit, that should show up in the bottom there. So we can move to that next slide. So making somebody co-host. To make somebody co-host, you would click the participants tab, which is down there in that bar, that Zoom bar that we talked about. And then it'll open up the participants, all your participants. So there's a lot that you can actually do in this tab. You can see how many participants are there. You can see whose microphones are active, whose whose cameras are active. And then if you scroll over one of the names, you can hit more. And there are different options that you can do that help, there's different options that you can do that are assigned to that particular participant. So as you can see, you can chat them individually. You can stop their video. You could spotlight their video. So say you're doing a presentation and you have a speaker, you can spotlight their video so that only their video would show up on people's screens, not everybody as they're talking. You can also make them host or co-host. Normally you won't make somebody host because then you would lose that feature of those breakout rooms. But you can make somebody co-host, and in doing that, it allows them to be able to share their screen as well. And so that's a great feature. So if you have somebody that you're teaming up, like Paul and I are doing right now, you can give them this ability to co-host so that they can share their screen along with you as well. Another important feature here to know is that you can rename them. So if for some reason they're struggling and they're coming in and they're user 248 or their Windows 647, you have no idea who they are. And so if they can't figure out how to rename themselves, you can do it for them right there. And if there's somebody that somehow gets in your meeting that you don't want them to be in, you can send them back to the waiting room so that you don't have to immediately just kick them out. You can just put them in the waiting room. The breakout rooms feature is super helpful, especially in faith sharing groups and small communities. If you have a larger group, it sometimes can be tough, even in person, right? If you have more than like 10 people in a small group, sometimes it can be tough for people to share. And so you might want to break that down to a smaller group of people. And Zoom allows us to do that with the breakout rooms. There are 3 different ways in which you can do it. We talked about the one, which is the pre-assigning. But once you get into the meeting, you can actually set up breakout rooms right there, which is you click on the bottom icon, and then this screen will pop up. You can set the number of rooms you want. So say you have 12 participants, it'd be great. Like, so you set 4, and then they'll make groups of there'll be 4 rooms with 3 participants in each of them. And if you hit automatic, that Zoom will do that for you, and it'll just randomly separate all 12 people out and do that. If you hit manual, you have the ability to actually assign those groups. So if say you have certain people you want to put together, that would be a great option to do. One helpful thing that has helped us is that, say you have a large group and you are assigning particular people with each other. It's sometimes helpful to assign them a number that they can put in their name so that you know that that's the group that they're supposed to be going to. And so that's helped us in the past. Yep, I think that's what we got for breakout rooms. The next is screen sharing. So at the bottom green icon there is the screen sharing button. So you can click that, and then also on the arrow there, that's another way that you can give people access to be able to share their screen as well. When you hit the screen sharing icon, all of the different programs you have up and open on your desktop will show up. If you don't see the one that you want, you'll just click the show all windows there, and you'll scroll down to find which one you want. If you're going to show a video, it's helpful to be able to, first you definitely have to hit the shared computer sound. That way they're not getting the sound through your computer, but they're actually getting it sent from the computer itself to them directly. So it's a direct audio connect. If there's a longer clip that you're going to be showing, if you click optimize screen sharing, what that does is it removes your picture from the screen, and it just allows the screen, and then that automatically also shares the sound as well. So that's helpful. This is probably one of the easier things, but also one of the most asked about questions. So your mute and video buttons are right there on the left of your Zoom screen. If you click on the video screen, like I said, they're either going to look like one of two things. You're either going to have it look like it does on the page, or there'll be a red slash through it. If there's a red slash through it, that means the mic's not active, or the video is not active. If you click on that button, you'll see all of the microphones you have available, right? And so if you have multiple microphones attached, you can choose, or if say you're using, like I'm using my AirPods right now, I have the my computer microphone, but then I also have my AirPod microphone. You can also change up your speaker if you have different speakers. But one helpful thing is that if you hit audio settings, you can test those microphones and speakers. This is what it would look like if you pull up the audio settings. If you're talking into these little output levels should be moving. And then the same thing, if they're not moving, you can test your speakers and figure out which ones work best for you. This is a helpful thing to walk people through. If for some reason their volume isn't working, or if it's really low, they have the ability to change it and up their volume right here. So that's an important thing to know. The same thing is set up for your camera. So if you just have one camera, it'll automatically choose that camera. But if there's multiple cameras that you're trying to select, they can do that there. And just like the audio settings, you can click on video settings and you can get more details. So as you can see here, you can click which cameras you'd like. If you have an HD camera, you can click that as well, so you get the better quality. You have the ability to adjust some of the different appearances that are there if that's needed. So say for some reason it's dark, you can change that the appearance on your side of the camera. The importance of the chat is something that I think over the past couple of months, we've grown into a greater awareness of and how helpful this tool is. So sometimes it's hard when you're running a meeting to be able to keep the conversation flowing and going, and then also be able to check the chat. So we have found that it's helpful in the meeting to assign somebody just to check to make sure all of the different comments in the chat are being checked. So having that chat moderator is helpful, and it's a really easy job. It doesn't have to be an assigned facilitator. Just that meeting, you can ask somebody, hey, do you mind just moderating the chat as we go through our meeting today, in case somebody has a point. Some people like to share in the chat rather than verbally, and so that's actually an option that you might not get in an in-person meeting, is that they feel more comfortable being able to just put their thoughts and a reflection in the chat feature, and then you can develop a conversation out of that. You can also, like I said, you can use the chat for feedback. So if you are going to ask a question or do stuff that there's a lot of responses, and say you have a big group and you don't want everyone responding, you can just have them respond directly in the chat box, and then the facilitator can review those responses and pick out common themes throughout that feedback. It's also important that if you ask a question, that you put it in the chat. When you ask a question, normally in person, right, we'll have that on the board and you might be able to put it on your screen. But if that's not the case, just so that people can really digest and understand what you just asked, to have that in the chat, they can keep coming back to that question. That's also very helpful when you, before you break someone out into the breakout rooms, to post the questions that you want them to reflect on. This way, when they go into the breakout room, they can see that question still there. The one important thing to note with the chat is if anyone comes in after you post something into the chat, they can't see that. So if you posted a question and they can't, and then you sent them to a small group, they might not be able to see that. So you might want to repost that question after they have they're in their breakout room. And then the The other helpful thing with the chat is just to post any resources that you're talking about. So you can directly post links to different documents, to folders into the chat that people can access on their end. So if you're talking about a resource, it's definitely helpful to just put that in there and make sure they have the ability to access it before the meeting finishes. And these are just some best practices that we've sort of come to know over the past couple of months. It's important to do a tech test and practice ahead of time, just to make sure everything is in order. If there's somebody that's going to be helping you with the tech throughout, it'd be helpful to walk with them through, like, what we'll be using. Are you going to use breakout rooms? Are we going to do that manual or automatic? Do we want to pre-assign them? What's going into the chat so that it's pre-planned that, okay, at this point in the meeting, we're going to send this in the chat. Having that organized, it sort of helps keep the flow of the meeting moving. It's very helpful to arrive those 15 minutes early to be able to make sure everything is in order. And then also you can welcome people promptly as they're coming in. Some people might sign in early, and I have found that that's a great time to really build relationships. When there's only a few people in the meeting, just like you would do in person, you really have a time to really check in on them and see how they've been doing. And so you can do that same thing while you're using Zoom. It's also important to mute your microphones when you're not speaking. This is something that, as we saw in the beginning, you can automatically do, but throughout, just like we had, we're going to talk about this in a second, but just as we had a chat moderator, it's helpful to have a tech moderator as you're going through, because inevitably, as you're going through your meeting, people will forget to mute themselves and something will happen. They'll be doing something in the background. And like we showed before in the participants section, you can actually mute them by clicking participants and then clicking on their microphone to mute them. It's really helpful to use the webcam and to encourage people not to turn off their webcam and just be a blank screen listening. It really helps with the engagement. Some people might not have a webcam, so you might not be able to do it, or they're just calling in. But the more engaged, they'll be more engaged if they're using that webcam. And then, as I mentioned, is we have found that having someone to run the tech side so that the facilitator can be present in the meeting, facilitating the conversation is helpful. That might not be possible, but if there's somebody in there that can just help with helping people if they're struggling with getting their video on or their audio on, they can do that behind the scenes while you are facilitating that meeting.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Stephen. And a little bit just about how much the cost for Zoom. So as I said earlier, Zoom does have the free accounts, but as Stephen said, actually, that you don't have the breakout room option with that. So, and that limitation of 40 minutes for more than 2 people doesn't work very well, if you're trying to do small groups. So we really recommend that you do go ahead and get a subscription for your parish as an individual. And that subscription is $149, basically $150 per year. And that comes with a single license. What that means about having a single license is it will be tied to a specific email account. I'm going to tell you how you can kind of make good use of that in a bit here, but it's tied to a single email account. So you can buy additional licenses for $15 each per month. So that can add up. So I want to help you understand maybe a way that you can get around that. But if you wanted to have multiple licenses where each person with a different email has their own account, you have that option to add licenses to a subscription. But here's another way of making the most out of a paid subscription. So these are tough times, tight money times for parishes. And oftentimes parishes can't afford all these kind of multiple licenses within a subscription. So what you can do is if you buy a single license, or I'm sorry, a single subscription, the person whose email that license is under can share their email with other people and the password, of course, and then other people can use the account. The only caveat with that is that two people cannot be on a meeting at the same time using the same license. So you can have all kinds of people, different people setting up and scheduling meetings using just one single license, as long as they're meeting at different times. All right, Stephen, why don't you share a little bit your information?
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this is our contact information. As I said, I'm the Associate Director for Catechesis in Catholic Schools for the Archdiocese of Newark. This is my phone number and email. Feel free, anyone who's been watching this webinar, if there's any questions you have or how to start up a virtual small group, we'd be happy to be able to answer more questions with that. I just wanted to also really just push that there's two things I think that we need to be aware of in the development of this, is that there is this fatigue of Zoom that has happened throughout the last 8 months of us being throughout the pandemic. But there's a greater thing that's happening, that there's such a longing for community. And so that's why these small Christian communities, they are what's going to revitalize our parishes and call people back into our parishes when they feel comfortable. And what I have found is that even though there's that Zoom fatigue, if there's meetings like these small groups that are happening, that are faith sharing groups, that are groups that are really filling that community longing that people have, that outweighs that Zoom fatigue, that they will participate in those groups. And you can really build a great community virtually. That's another great thing that I've found over these past couple months, is that even though we all like to be in person, we like to have that interaction, we have greater access to people here. And so, like I said, any information that we can provide at the Archdiocese, we'd be happy to do so. So feel free to reach out to us.
And my information is up there as well, especially from a broader community and audience who may be watching this webinar. So please feel free to reach out to me. Renew is here for you, wants to help you. I so much affirm what Stephen just said about community and the power of Zoom. And again, this webinar, we gave you a lot of information today. And I just want to say that you don't need to use all of that or everything that we said. You can keep it simple. Zoom is actually pretty simple to use. So I hope you're not intimidated by it. Use YouTube and those other tutorials we talked about. Take the risk, as Stephen said, because our need for community and being in community, and community is a basis for church and parish life, is vital right now. And it's going to be here to stay after the pandemic as well. This has really broadened our opportunities to reach out to people. Stephen, any last word?
No, I think that's the key, is that this is a tool that I believe really we would not have used if it wasn't for the pandemic. We wouldn't have integrated into our programs, into our connecting with our communities. And it's something that shouldn't go away, because we have the ability to really reach beyond our parish walls. And that's the goal of the Christian life, right? We're supposed to echo Christ's message and to go out and to make other disciples. And so this allows us to do that. And so I really appreciate your time, Paul, and Renew's help in really strengthening the small group initiatives in the Archdiocese, and for people across the much larger audience who can utilize this. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And blessings to all the people in the Archdiocese of Newark as you do this work of building small groups and parishes during Lent and beyond. So God bless. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Thank you.
All right.